Make your marks.
You're listening to the Pullbuoy World Championships podcast.
Well, we've reached the halfway point of the 2023 World Swimming Championships in Fukuoka, and it has been fast and furious. This is the Pullbuoy World Championships podcast. Steve here. I've got my usual companions, Bob and Katie, on the line. Bob is newly back from Fukuoka. How was Japan, Bob?
Yeah, great. I spent 12 days out there, open water, mainly a bit of water polo as well, and took in the first 2 days of the pool swimming. In which time I saw Matt Richards do a couple of very spectacular things, and a few of our other swimmers do pretty good as well, though we've got actually better since I left, so maybe it had something to do with that.
And Casey, we said on our preview episode that it was going to be a fast competition. It's certainly living up to that billing so far. Really, really quick in many events.
I think it's actually quite a lot better than I thought it would be, and I thought it would be good. But there's just been sort of some really, really good races, not, necessarily really fast, although there have been some really fast ones. I don't think I'd be that excited by the men's 400 free, but that was a great race to kick things off on the first night. So I've been really enjoying it so far.
Well, we will circle back on some of those global swims that caught the eye a bit later in this episode, but Bob has already mentioned the man of the hour, Matt Richards, the newly minted world champion over 200 meters freestyle, and he's just been sensational so far this week, Bob.
And I claim that that was all down to me, his 200 freestyle win, because of the fact that his mum and his dad independently said, if you see Matt, could you give him a hug for us? So when I did, I said, I've got instructions from your parents to give you a double hug. And he said, well, let's get on with it then. We did it. I got told off by the performance director for doing so, who told me that he had a job to do, did Matt Richards. And I said, I think he's doing it pretty well. And of course, the next day he went and got the 200 freestyle. And since when he's broken the British record twice in the 100 free. So I'm getting back on a plane to give him a hug tomorrow.
That's been a great hug, Bob. Well done.
I was just saying the same thing. Yeah, just thinking the same thing. So powered by the Ballard hug, Casey, he was excellent through the rounds in the 200 free, improved heat to semi to final. And the thing that struck me about that final, I don't know about you, was the fact that him and Tom Dean, who took the silver, and we'll talk about him in a minute, but they both paced the race so really well so that they finished really, really strong down that last 50 and were there when it counted.
Yeah, and I think that's something that's so hard to do, particularly, given last year, the way that we saw that Popovic paced his 200 and his 100. He's typically so strong at the back end. So, with that in mind, it must be really, really hard for them to keep their cool, sort of hang with him, and then kind of have the belief that they can take it on that last 50. It was such a great race. Seeing them both finish so strong and not knowing which way it was going to go on the touch, but knowing that there were going to be British people on the podium was amazing.
And the great thing, Steve, is that I knew, or I had a fairly good inkling he was going to do that after seeing his 4x1 swim the other day when he was the only sub-47 swimmer. And I'm thinking, hello, Matt is really in great form here. And I think that actually kind of stoked him up and stirred him up a bit more because he missed out on the chance of what probably would have been a medal on day one.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. Well, we'll come back to that relay very shortly. But the Katie mentioned David Popovic, who obviously was a huge favourite coming into that final, and it felt like he was going for the time. And the British guys were racing the race, if you see what I mean, because Popovic was faster than his world junior record to 150, and then really struggled down that last 50 meters. He just didn't have the conditioning, or it wasn't his day, or whatever. The British guys, they swam their races, they paced it, knowing that they needed to be able to finish strongly. They both did that. Obviously, big personal best for Matt. I think Tom's second fastest time ever. And shades of Tokyo, Bob, with the 1-2 and just those few hundredths between them.
Yeah, Tom made that point in the interview afterwards. It was kind of a reversal of roles with Duncan from Tokyo a couple of years ago. But the great thing is that because it's such a great camaraderie with this 4x2 quartet and beyond, is they relish each other's success. Obviously, they'd love to have it themselves, but Tom kind of knows how Duncan feels now, and Matt maybe has now assumed the mantle of our top 200 freestyler. Well, obviously from this year he has, and I'm not overly surprised by that. But we've also seen Tom in all the other events he's done. His finish is incredible. We saw it in the 100, we've seen it in the 200 IM. That Tom's last 50 is quite astonishing and quite extraordinary, as was the case in the Olympics.
And Bob's mentioned Katie Matt's 100 freestyle already. He obviously had no hangover from winning that 200 free gold medal. He was in the pool again straight away the following morning, set a British record 47.59 over 100 free. Then went faster again in the semi-final, 47.47 for another British record, fastest qualifier. I mean, he's must be riding such a wave at the moment.
And I don't think we should underestimate how hard it is to back up something like that. He will have got to bed really late because he will have had media, he will have had drugs testing, and just the buzz of suddenly, being a really, really promising young swimmer to British champion to suddenly world champion. That's huge. And he's just got straight back in and, swum his socks off again. So I think he's just having such a huge, huge year. It's incredible to watch. I suppose my slight kind of niggle would be I sort of worry about the spotlight that this potentially puts on him in the lead up to Paris, but he seems like he's so kind of chilled and taking everything in and completely able to cope with everything. So, if it's another challenge, then I'm sure it's something he'll just take in his stride.
Bear in mind also that the finals are 8 p.m. local time, which is as late as I've ever seen finals in Worlds or Olympics. So by the time you're right, they've done media, by the time they've done the drugs test, by the time they've done the medal ceremony, and by the time they're back at the hotel, it's well after midnight. And, you got to swim the next morning. The turnaround time is actually less than it normally is anyway.
Well, he's managed that really, really well. And hopefully, the rest of the meet will follow on in a similar vein for him. But a big challenge awaits him over 100 free. By the time you're listening to this, you may well know the outcome of that. But let's hope he can do the business.
Against Chalmers head-to-head is going to be really exciting.
Yeah, will be a good one. It will be a good one. Let's touch on that freestyle relay. Bob, you've already mentioned it. It's one of those frustrating, things that happens in sport, isn't it? That we were excited to watch them swim. We thought they had a really great medal shot. The results as they turned out proved that was the case. But it's sport, isn't it? You just have to, roll with the punches and come back stronger, I guess.
It is, but I know Jacob's the youngest member of the team and everything that goes with it. But we had such a lead at that point. It wasn't even tight. And you could have had one of the slowest takeovers ever. It really didn't matter at that stage. We weren't racing the clock. We weren't racing anybody else at that stage because Matt had such a superb 46 high, which nobody else did. That it's one of those. I'm sure there've been a lot of recriminations, or Jacob more than anybody else would be thinking about what should have been. But it's one of those kind of you go. And Katie's been in a case where she's been in relays. In those situations where you're so much on top, why would you go for a flyer?
I think it's really tricky, isn't it? Because we can look at it any other year. We'd look at it and we'd be like, "Oh, it's really annoying because we could have got a medal." And it'd be really and I know it's more than annoying because we're talking about possibly a world becoming a world champion for people who wouldn't otherwise have done that, including Jacob himself. And no one does that on purpose. And there's a load of factors that go into a flyer. Sometimes it's what the person coming in, doing an extra stroke. I remember being absolutely terrified of doing a takeover of someone in a medley relay who I think was a bit dead and did about 57 strokes from the flags to the wall doing fly. And I was just like, I'm just going to ruin it for everyone. And I know this is freestyle and it's a bit different, but there are lots of factors. It's happened. The main thing here is that there's an Olympic qualification up for grabs. And this means that some four are going to have to go to the World Champs in Doha, which I think we jokingly said in the preview podcast. We just don't want disqualifications because top 16 is probably not that hard, and the knock-on effect is that some chaps are going to have to do that at a time when they'd really rather not be
that
traveling.
Was not in the plan.
Like to just be focusing.
That definitely was not in the plan for the team. They didn't want to send relays to Doha. They want everything cut and dried by now, but they're going to have to go.
It's just the way that it is. Like everyone is going to feel rubbish about it. I feel massively sorry for Jacob, who's going to feel the worst about it. These things happen. They've happened, let's go back to when we were talking on our 10-year anniversary about the Aussies being idiots and jumping in to celebrate. They'd finished the race and they'd won the race and they threw it away. That was far stupider than someone just getting overexcited and trying to get their team to do it.
Yeah, that was not knowing the rules, though, wasn't it, in their case?
Yeah, but I mean, that was just stupidity. This wasn't stupidity. This was just eagerness. It was excitement. It was adrenaline, and it happens. But it's just the knock-on effects, unfortunately, this year are much bigger than they are in other years, and it's tough.
Well, I take full responsibility because in our preview, I did say we didn't want any minus 0.04 takeovers, and
predicted
that's what happened.
Nostradamus.
Oh, we're such a
So there we
powerful
are.
group. Aren't we?
Me and the hugs.
But I think I get the feeling that, Katie, you may remember this in 2008 before the Beijing Olympics, the European Championships. I know it's not quite the same, but Britain did a thing where it was only Eindhoven, so slightly easier to get to than Doha, but no, not substantially different in travel time, where people flew in the morning, raced and flew home in the evening, or stayed one night or whatever. So I would expect that British Swimming are going to have to adopt something like that, where they'll fly 4, 5, 6 of them, whatever, out there the day before. They'll race in the morning in the heat, race the final, hopefully get the Olympic spot, jump on a plane and come straight back again. But it's the only way I can see that it's going to work.
Well, I mean, and I suppose there is a question mark over that. Do they even need to race a final? Could they just go and do a heat and put down a good time and then come home? They could. Or is the Olympic qualification from finals only? No, it can't be from finals only.
It's heats and finals, but I guess you run the risk of dropping out. But yeah, in theory, you could do
You'll probably know by then. You'll know all the times that have been, done from here, and so it's totally handleable. It's just not.
Maybe they would just fancy the chance of a medal, though. Who knows? We'll see.
Yeah.
All of that is to come and to be resolved. So we will keep our eyes peeled on what the plan is.
Might be heat declared winners at this rate anyway in Doha.
Yeah, maybe it will be only 8 teams in it. That would make life easier, wouldn't it? Okay, let's move on, because there have been some other very encouraging British swims so far. I want to move on and talk about Ollie Morgan in the backstroke events. He's made his international debut in Fukuoka, and he looks like he belongs, Bob. He's just stepped in, lifetime best in the heats, moved on again in the semi-final, so close to making the final, but he just kind of feels like he should be there.
I love it when in the media tribune at international events, people come up to you and go, "Who's this guy? We've never heard of him." And obviously nobody had until this year, even in the UK. So it was nice to go, yeah, he's promising. He's a rare beast in the fact he does 50, 100 and 200. We talk about the how few people do that in world swimming. Most do 100 and 200 or 50 and 100. Very few do all three. And I saw his heat swim. It looked great. I missed his semi-final swim because I wasn't there at that point. But he looked great in the heat. Didn't look overawed. Looked like he belonged, and I think was thrilled to do that. And such a real shame we didn't get a chance. I looked at that final. I thought, well, I would love to have seen what he would have done in that final.
Well, he'll get another chance, Katie, in the medley relay, we would think. So maybe he can move on again. I mean, he moved himself up to, I think, 3rd all time on the GB rankings, 53.2. It would be fantastic to see him crack 53. That would be a real kind of boon, wouldn't it, for the relay and for him?
That would be brilliant. I think it's something that we've been wanting and sort of lacking for a while. So, and I think it's actually something that I think is quite rare to see from the GB team. And I sort of say this quite reluctantly. I always think that the US are really, really good at, someone will come out of nowhere, drop a load of time at trials, make the team, and then they'll be on this team and they'll move it on again. And I think that's something that we typically haven't been that good at. It's like someone will come out of relatively nowhere, drop a load of time at trials, and then be pretty unremarkable when we get to the event. It's like they're overawed by the occasion or something, and that's absolutely not the case. And I think we are getting better at it, actually. Looking at Ollie, thinking of someone like Medi last year, sort of coming onto the team and just taking everything in her stride and, just performing every time it's asked of her. Maybe it's something that we're improving at. I don't know. I think we definitely are less of a, there's less of a, well, I've made the team, so that's all I wanted kind of mentality than perhaps there has been in the past. But brilliant to see him, and I'm looking forward to his other events as well.
I think we feel we belong on that stage now, whereas maybe once upon a time we didn't.
Yeah.
Yes, there's a definite element of that. Yeah, I would agree entirely. You mentioned Medi there, Katie. She was back again this year, 100 backstroke. She made the final, equaled her 7th place from Budapest last year, so consolidating her performance. I think I'd like to see her get a bit close to her best time, and I'm sure she would like to as well, but she's certainly up there in that top echelon of women backstrokers globally. But we mentioned her teammate Lauren Cox on our preview. I know I was keen to see her swim, and she did a really good 100 backstroke, just missed the final in that, but today her 50 backstroke was superb. Brilliant start, great breakout, level with the American duo, which is always a good indicator that you're doing something good, and really exciting for the 50 final, Bob.
Yeah, she looked terrific today, didn't she? And it was one of those where sometimes with those camera angles you're not quite sure, and then the commentary was saying that she's right up there, and when they went to the sideways on camera and you got a good look, thought, she's done a really solid job here. Shame she couldn't quite finish it off, but tomorrow night will be the time to do that. And very encouraging. Sad, obviously, it's not an Olympic event, but nonetheless, it's an important event for this year.
She's not far off the European record, is she? I think she's actually it's very close to her. I remember when Georgia Davis broke it. I can't remember if it was broken again, but she's certainly not far off. Sorry to put you on the spot there.
You have put me on the spot. I know that the British record is 27:19, which is.
And I think that was the European record
Dawson.
at the time. I can't remember if it's broken again, but it's not going to be much faster than that, is it? Because the world record's only 26:9, so she's within 0.3 of that. It's a serious time.
27:10 from our good friend Kira Toussaint. So,
yeah.
There we are.
So
she's getting on with that. Yeah. So one to watch for in the final, perhaps. But nonetheless, she's acquitting herself really well out there. So well done, Lauren. Switching back to the men, again another non-Olympic event so far, but someone who's shown some really great form. Jacob Peters finished agonisingly 4th in the 50 fly, very very close to the British record. A couple of times, lifetime best in the final. He's looking really good, Bob. Yeah,
looked very good in the mixed medley as well, I thought, on Wednesday. And hasn't had a bad swim at all yet. His heat swim was his PB in the on the first day, and he looks like he belongs. And obviously there's a serious challenger now to James Guy for the 100 fly position in the medley relay.
Yeah, I was very interested that James didn't get a swim at all in the mixed medley. I thought they might have given him the heat just to see where he was at, and then maybe swap Jacob in, or if Jacob's from the heat, swap him out and throw James in. Given he's got a lot of credit in the bank in those relays, but we haven't seen him yet at all. I guess Katie, the 4x200 is weighing on everyone's mind, perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it is, and I can understand to an extent why it would be, but it's a long time to sit around, isn't it? And particularly when it's really, really draining, these kind of, being at these kind of events, and they're long events, and not getting in yourself and the stress of kind of waiting for your event. It's pretty tough. It's not all energy conserving, I wouldn't say. So, I'd have thought that he would quite like to have a swim, but I'm sure we'll come back to this. I think there've been quite a few decisions about who swims what that I've been quite confused about, and I can't necessarily understand at this meet so far on the British side. So maybe that's all part of that.
I think we had the same conversation during the Olympics, didn't we?
We did a little. I mean, let's deal with that now, because we know that Abby Wood didn't swim the 200 IM. We believe, but we don't know for sure. in favour of the women's 4x1, who did very well. Actually, we haven't spoken about them, but they came fourth, and I think that squad has potential, or had potential, to get on the podium. Everyone got right up their best, but I mean, that's one of those things with the relay, isn't it? But they swam very well. Was it enough to let Abby or ask Abby to sit out the 200 IM? I don't know. If it was about Olympic qualification, then they probably could have achieved that anyway. Maybe Medi could have swum the heat if they wanted to give Abby more recovery time. I don't know. There's lots of other things that perhaps could have been done. We've seen James, as you say, maybe not. We don't know. Part for the 4x2 possibly. Anna Hopkin pull out of the 100 freestyle. Again, we don't know if that's something to do with her, but she seemed to be on good form today in the mixed medley. It's all very odd, is what I would say. I mean, Bob, I know you feel very strongly about this anyway.
I do.
And
I understand why we're putting so much emphasis on the relays, because we are improving in pretty much all of them. In some, we're the best in the world. But, I believe our swimmers are capable, as indeed other countries have proved with their swimmers. They're capable of doing individual events independently and doing relays as well. That they are finely tuned athletes these days, finely honed swimmers who are doing great times here. And I don't believe none of them have. I mean, Matt has a huge workload this week because of the amount of things he's doing, but a lot of people don't. Duncan doesn't particularly. Anna doesn't really. And so I'm thinking that why are we wrapping them in cotton wool? Which we kind of are here, and stopping them do the event they've trained for, the event they've qualified for.
I sort of think we need to get real a bit, and I'm going to sound, I don't know what the word is, like I've got an inflated ego about how good British swimming are, but right, so if the problem is that we want to qualify for Olympic relays, fine, I understand that, of course we want to do that, but let's get real. It's top 16 here and in Doha. I couldn't name 15 countries that are better than us. I can name 15 countries, I reckon. But there is no way. We could do that standing on our heads, be top 16. There is absolutely no way that we need to have all of our best people swimming the heats, all of our best people swimming the final. We probably don't need all of our best people swimming the final. We probably don't even need to make a final. And we're going to get that place. I just can't see a world in which any of our relays, even if it's not our absolute best team, are not going to make that top 16 time. So then why not? I mean, and again, I don't have an insight into whether or not these swimmers have been consulted, but I can't believe that Abby Wood, who is a real contender for a medal, wouldn't want to do the 200 IM. And wouldn't think herself capable of doing the 200 IM and 100 free in the same session. I cannot believe that Anna Hopkin, who's owner of one of the fastest 100 free splits of all time, and an Olympic finalist and a British record holder in the 100 free, wouldn't want to swim the 100 free individual. I can't really understand. I wonder if something else, perhaps she's not feeling well, although she dropped an amazing split today in the mixed medley relay. Perhaps there's something else going on there, because there's no obvious clash, I don't think, at that 100 free. But come on.
We saw it with James Guy at the Olympics, though. We're coming back to that situation where he had a good chance of an individual 100 fly medal and wasn't allowed to do it.
It's but like that. Don't get me wrong, because I still think that was a very odd and a tough position to put him in. I don't stand by that decision, apart from they've got Olympic gold, so it's tough. But that I can sort of see the logic around it, whereas this is just like, come on, these people train 30 hours a week. You're not telling me they can't manage 2 swims in one session, or even in a day, or even one day after the next.
These are people who not so long ago were doing
World Championships.
And these are people
it's
who are
not
doing ISL
Speedo League or whatever it's called now. Yeah, exactly. Yes. You're right. They've done ISL where they've swapped their heaps swims upon swims, and they've been amazing at it. So I just think it's weird, and I actually think it's almost a little bit disrespectful of it, what our swimmers have trained for and what they're capable of.
Well, it has been, surprising in many ways so far this week, but only the performance director, head coach, and the swimmers will know exactly what what the reasons are and how those decisions have been arrived at. And we're not going to, unfortunately, solve that here, but it has been a bit strange. So let's move on. Away from the... Oh, well, actually, there was one other thing I wanted to talk about. You mentioned 200 IM there. We saw a number of disqualifications in the semi-final of the women's 200 IM. Unfortunately, one of those was our own Katie Shanahan, who had looked really good, actually, in her swim, but she got pinged for a twitch at the start, and the rules are very strict on that. They've kind of tightened that up, I believe, recently. So fair, if unfortunate. But we saw all sorts of controversy about the back to breast turns. No, Kelly McCune got pinged. The Italian lady whose name escapes me, Sarah Franceschi. Similarly, and then obviously a whole hoo-ha about Alex Walsh not getting disqualified for doing something that looked very similar. They had the video ref involved in that, Bob. I don't know your view on the video refs.
Yeah, I don't dislike the review system, but I think I have the same objection and observation about it as I do VAR in football and in water polo for that matter, and having seen that quite a bit while I was in Fukuoka, is it's taking too long. It's taking way too long. And sometimes we get a situation like the other night, I've seen a couple of times while I was there, where we have this long, drawn out 2-3 minutes, and then nobody gets DQ'd at all. So I have no idea what they're looking for. We see that little, the bunker where they're all sitting there looking at TV screens. Now, surely if somebody's looking at TV screen, an isolated lane as they go along, they'll have seen that during the course of the race anyway. I'm not quite sure how that system is working, but it's not working as it should do yet.
Katie, in one sentence, opinions on the DQs, fair, unfair?
I think it's being applied a bit inconsistently. That's what I would say. And therefore it's open for people to pick and say unfair. I think some of the screen grabs make it a bit difficult because they could all be taken at slightly different points in the turn. So it's really difficult to compare. Sorry, this is not one sentence. I feel a bit sorry for Alex Walsh because she's got 400 IM coming up and now must be so terrified of that back to breast turn. But there you go. But can I just make one comment? Katie Shanahan. I think the quality of starting has been a bit pants.
Awful.
I think
the hold has been
they hold
way
them
too
for so long. So I don't know if that. I mean, she obviously twitched, and that is what it is, and she's been disqualified, and there's nothing we can do about it. But how can we be at World Championships and having starts like this? It's like they're trying to get them disqualified. Nobody likes a full start. It's so rubbish. And I kind of think with swimming, I wouldn't be that bothered if we went back to 2-start rule because it's not like running where they're just messing about with it. I just think full starts are. Yeah, they're not my favourite thing.
Well, first night as well, so hadn't had a chance to kind of get the feel for what the start was going to be like, I suppose, which doesn't help. But all fair points. Let's move on because away from the Brits, there have been some amazing swims. 4 world records so far. Men's 400 IM, women's 400 free, women's 200 free, and the women's 4x100 freestyle relay. And the guys over at Propulsion have challenged us to rank them best to worst, which is a tough one, isn't it?
It's got to be Marshall.
So,
Marshall number 1.
Well, I mean, I tend to agree. I mean, let's face it, it was unbelievable to go. What did he go? 4025 in a 400
record
IM.
that's lasted for 14 years, as indeed Pellegrini's had as well. But so.
Yeah, so 50. Was it 15? Was it 2008?
Yeah, so
15 years. Yeah. Take down Michael Phelps by that margin. He made it look easy, didn't he, Katie?
He's amazing, isn't he? And like you like him as well. You can't not root for him a little bit. And I think the whole story makes it a little bit. He's being coached by Phelps's coach, and Phelps is there, and it was incredible. It was such a beautiful swim, and I sort of thought after the backstroke, this guy's meant to be amazing. There are other people with him, and then he was just like, "Yeah, see you guys. I'm now gonna turn on the gas for the second half of this 400 IM." And I think quite a cool thing, and it could all be showboating, but he doesn't really seem like that, is that he said in his interview the best is yet to come. And I just really believe it because he's still quite a small guy. You couldn't stand him next to peak Phelps and think, yeah, these guys are going to have a great race of it. These guys are going to do similar times. I think that ranks best.
Right.
For
well,
me.
I'm going to jump to the other end and say what I think should rank fourth, and then we can have an argument about second and third, because I think impressive though it was, the women's 4x100 free relay by Australia, I mean, it was a phenomenal set of splits that they put together. I mean, the average 51.99, I think I read, which is bonkers, but we know how good they are. It was their own record. They smashed it, but it was kind of expected. So however good it was, I think I ranked that one fourth.
As in they've underperformed before rather than them swimming out of their skins now.
Well, I mean, I think it's just you kind of it didn't have the shock value, I guess, of the other three.
No, 2 is Molly O'Callaghan, without a question of a doubt for me.
I think you're right. And do you know what? I was going to put the women's 400 free last because it was like that world record was being broken. I just wasn't. The shock for me was I guess that sort of that Titmus won, even though you should never count her out. The shock was more that someone was off the podium, I guess. But I think I think this World Championship comes at a great time, to be honest, for her. She's had a meet where she's the one with the target on her back, and I don't think this is going to happen again next year. I don't mean she won't get beaten by Titmus, because Titmus is clearly insanely good. But yeah, I was going to put that fourth, but I can get on board with Marchand, O'Callaghan, Titmus, Australia.
Yeah, I mean,
it's a lot of Australia, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, but they've been great, haven't they? I mean, Molly's 200 free, that record, obviously, it's old, 14 years, as you said, Bob, for that one.
Can I throw somebody into the mix? What about Hafnui?
Yeah.
What about Hafnui in the top 4?
Well, he didn't set a world record, so we can't put him in the top 4 just yet.
Yeah, but he's going to...
He's been great, don't get me wrong.
It's strict rules. Well, strict rules, world records only.
Because he could get three medals. He could possibly get 3 golds, as indeed Matt Richards.
No, he's been...
It's cool to see, because we haven't seen him since the Olympics, really, have we? So it's cool to see him, A, back, and B, even better, because that was just a... Who is this guy? He's come out of nowhere in Tokyo, and now he's Olympic champion. And by the way, he's not done yet. It's cool to watch, but I'm afraid he can't yet be in the world record holder ranking system.
No. So there you go, Scott and Dan. It's Marchand, O'Callaghan, Titmus, women's 4x1. There we go. That's our ranking. Quick shout out.
The men's 4x2 when we beat that, of course.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Right. Yes.
Oh, I hope so. Yes. Yes, please.
Quick shout out for Dan Whiffen. Bob.
Yeah.
I mean,
European
we spoke to Kev.
European record, and it was kind of overlooked with the fact that he didn't get in the top 3. But as he said in his post-race interview with Nick, the improvement he's made on the 800, if he makes that improvement on the 15, he'll break the world record. I know it doesn't necessarily work like that, and it probably won't work like that, but I still fancy Dan for a top 3 place in the 15.
Oh, I hope so. That would be so cool.
I mean, that was you mentioned the 400 free was a great race. That 800 free was a great race, Katie, wasn't it? So exciting.
Yeah, I think I sort of thought I was finding it quite hard to look past Sam Short, because I've always thought of him as the sort of longer distance, right? And then we saw him doing an incredible 400, so I was like, what's his 8 going to be like? What's the 15 going to be like? And I assumed that he'd take gold in that, but the number of people we've got to watch and to look out for in those men's distance races, that it's pretty
I wonder about
exciting.
Paltrinieri, though. I've got to say that the way Paltrinieri swam that 800, I might actually take him up in my top 3 for the 15.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was very much about speed, wasn't it? That 800 rather than endurance. So whether he's got the raw speed, we'll wait and see. But twice as far, isn't it? So maybe he will. It's going to be epic. I think that 1500. So let's look out for that on the last day. One final question, and this is something that lots of people have been contacting me about on Twitter, basically to find out how to watch these championships. But we know obviously that it's not on the BBC, it's not on any of the broadcasters in the UK. It is, and Bob, I'll throw this to you first. Here we go. But the question that I was asked by Matt Bailey on Twitter was, how do we convince UK broadcasters that swimming, and he includes diving and artistic swimming in this as well, are worth the money? I mean, how do we? get it
results,
shown. I mean, what's your view
surely.
on it?
I mean, the thing is, Fukuoka 2001, we came off the back of our worst ever Olympic Games in terms of obviously no medals, very few finalists, and we showed it. 2001, off the back of the worst Olympics. We just come off the back of the best Olympics our swimmers have ever had, and they can't get on terrestrial TV. I don't get it. Our dives have just had their best performance at World Championships. Our open water swimmers, Hector made top 10, Amber made top 20 in fields of 60, 70. You know, they're really good performances. And they can't get on the BBC, which in a year's time will be all over the Olympic Games and will want to speak to the likes of Matt Richards and Tom Dean, people that they've ignored this year. They put it way down on their sports website. It's not even one of the top stories. You know, Matt Richards winning a 1-2 in the 200 freestyle was about the 10th story on the front page, down below the county championship scores. Come on, BBC, what's your priorities on this? It's the second biggest sport at the Olympics, which you'll be covering in 12 months' time to the day, and you've ignored it completely. It's an absolute disgrace, and people should email the director of sport of the BBC.
I mean, I have just to say, just on the other side of things, Bob, I have just looked at the schedule, and Bargain Hunt was on at 12:15.
They have two channels.
I think we've all just got to step back and realise that Bargain Hunt was on, and that what can we do in the face of such magnificent television?
I'm sure there's loads of game shows in the afternoon. Even a highlight show. Right, even a highlight show. If you're saying, okay, the Women's World Cup is taking priority, you can make that claim. That's quite right. The women's netball starts in a couple of days' time. The swimming's virtually done by that time anyway. But if you're saying, oh, we can't do two sports at the same time, that's absolute bullcrap, quite frankly.
On iPlayer, like you can have a million streams on at once. Doesn't I would love it to be on mainstream TV.
It should be
TV.
streamed
Don't
and then
get me
do a
wrong.
highlights
I want to watch
program
it
in the evening.
Yeah,
you know, it could be on BBC Four. They put the cricket on BBC Four. Why can't the swimming be on BBC Four?
Bob, do you think it would be different if Adam Peaty was racing this year?
I think that might have an impact. But the fact is, we've got Olympic champions already in that team going into Fukuoka. We've got world champions going into that team in Fukuoka. So I know Adam Peaty is a bit like the Tom Daley effect in diving, I suppose. But the fact is, we still have success. British swimming is not all about Adam Peaty, and it won't be all about Adam Peaty after Paris when he'll probably retire anyway. So the fact is that, you know, they don't do that with any other sport. Why would they do it with aquatics?
I suppose maybe there's a point there that, you know, British swimming and, you know, working with its partners really ought to be doing more to, you know, to push the profile of Tom Dean and all of the guys who are in that relay are stars.
Yeah, and they're all great interviewees.
Letting the sport be carried by Adam.
And they're all great interviewees.
And just expecting
you know,
it.
You saw Matt Richards' interview after the 200. Tom Dean's one of the most loquacious people
he's
out
brilliant.
there. You know, Jimmy Guy's fantastic. You know, Duncan's terrific.
Freya Anderson speaks brilliantly.
I actually would find it very hard to find a single person on the GB team, high profile, so on the GB team, who's not very articulate and a great interviewee. They're all good. You know, it's because people won't make the effort to get out there and do it. And I think, I'm sorry, for my former employee, I think the BBC is an absolute disgrace with this.
Well, I think we're all on the same page that we would have loved to see it on the BBC, and it would have avoided the slightly ironic episode where Andy Jameson couldn't get the stream to work and couldn't watch it because the broadcast was having network problems. But you know, it's such a shame, isn't it, that they're not getting their moment in the spotlight.
And the BBC offered nothing for it. The BBC offered to World Aquatics basically nothing for the rights. So why should the BBC get it for nothing when everybody else in the world is paying for it? BBC shouldn't be a special case.
I suppose it's a shame that, I mean, we're relying fully on the BBC, aren't we? There are other channels that could show it and, you know, have no interest, and that's the thing. I just wish, you know, I love the sport and I know I'm a nerd about it, but I just wish it was bigger. I wish more people loved it. I wish more people wanted to watch it. And, you know, like, I challenge anyone to watch the women's 200 free today, the men's 200 free yesterday, and not think, oh my God, this
and
is
especially
brilliant,
when we've got success. You're right. If there's no Britons doing well in swimming, then people go, well, why do I care about Americans and Australians and Chinese winning? Well, we've got finalists and more finalists and yet more finalists. We have 1 and 2 in the 200 free. We may well have a winner in the 100 free. We could break the world record in the 4x2. There are so many great stories coming from this week that should be amplified and highlighted by the BBC or any other broadcaster for that matter. And look at I put out on Twitter, you will have seen the list of broadcasters from around the world who are covering this, that there are broadcasters who barely have any swimmers who are showing this live. Come on, BBC, or come on Channel 4, or come on whoever. It doesn't have to be the BBC, but somebody should be showing this.
Indeed, it should be on somewhere in the UK and not involve registering for a random website somewhere with some really ropey navigation. But which, in fairness,
it's worked.
In my experience, has worked. Yeah, exactly, has worked reasonably well. So at least we can watch it. Obviously, it could be so much better. Now we'll obviously do our best to keep the stories out there. I know there are others doing similar things to try and raise the profile, but yeah. Well, I don't know.
Also, should I say something? Also, there were no members of the written media from the UK there.
Yeah, Craig Lord was on Twitter bemoaning that as well.
So there is no British representation of the media out there at all.
So yeah, Nick Hope flying the flag.
He's working for World
Aquatics. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Such a shame. But we aren't going to solve it in this podcast, much as we would love to.
Barbara.slater@bbc.co.uk.
There you go. That's where to send your comments and ask why it's not on. Well, it's been great run round the first 4 days of the World Champs. Thoroughly enjoyed listening to you both. So thank you very much for your input. You certainly can. Bob is still on Fukuoka time, I think. All right, well, we've got 4 more days of excitement in Fukuoka to come. We'll be back after that's finished to wrap things up, hopefully with a load more British medals. After all, we did predict some numbers where we may get there. Some of us may be right. You never know. Fingers crossed that is the case. In the meantime, if you want to get in touch, I'm on Twitter @pullboy or @pullboyuk on Instagram. pullboy.co.uk/contact for an email, and leave us a review if you've liked hearing us vent about the lack of BBC coverage. Until we're back with you, thanks for listening.
You've been listening to the Pullboy podcast. For more episodes, visit www.pullboy.co.uk/podcast.